Welcome everyone to Coffees and Connections, data-driven decision making. We are excited to have Hantzmon and Wiebel with us here this morning. But before we kick it over to them, just like we do on every Coffees and Connections, if you can tell us your name, your business, and then today's icebreaker question is, if you could pick one new skill in an instant, what would it be? So if you could pick one new skill in an instant, what would it be? So that's your question of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and go on my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on Shasta. So Shasta, if you can unmute yourself, tell us a little bit about you and answer the question.
I am Shasta Weeks, and I am the operations director here at the Chamber. And I handle all of the accounts payable and member management and just basically anything that needs done. And so one new skill, that put me on the spot. I wasn't prepared. I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that one. I'll have to come back to one.
All right, we can come back to you. All right, Matt Hale, if you can introduce yourself and tell us what's one new skill you would like to have in an instance.
All right, my name is Matt Hale. I'm with Hantzmon Wiebel. We're a CPA firm in Charlottesville. New skill, there are so many things that immediately came to mind. But one of them that well, learn a new language. I'm going to give you a couple. Learn a new language is one, but one I've really been wanting to do is learn how to work on engines and mechanical. Because when it comes to my vehicle, or when it comes to four-wheelers or ATVs, or even my lawnmower, I got to YouTube all that to figure out what's going on. And I wish I just knew how generally engines worked in the come to flow. I have a really high level vision of it, but I wish I could troubleshoot and fix those things. So
there you go. That'd be an awesome skill. Then you can come over to my house and fix my stuff.
Will do.
All right, Miss Courtney, if you can unmute yourself.
Matt, you can come to our house because my husband is always working on something mechanical. He has that brain that amazes me. I'm Courtney Thompson, President and CEO of the Chamber. I would like to learn to ice skate. I don't know why. I just think it looks like fun.
That's awesome. And the outfit to go with it, because you have to have the outfit.
You know, of course.
All right. Thank you. All right, Matt Dean, if you can unmute yourself.
Sure. I'm also at Hantzmon Wiebel. There was debate earlier who was the cool Matt and who was the not cool Matt, but I still say Matt Hale's the cool Matt. But as far as one new skill, I think it'd be cool to know how to play guitar. I mean, that might be fun.
That's awesome. That's a good one. I like it. All right, Jennifer, if you can unmute yourself, tell us your name, where you're from, and then also what's one new skill you would like to have in an instant.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Smiley Gill. I'm a director of operations at Centera Rockingham for the medical group. So happy to be joining you guys for the first time. Immediately, I too thought of language, and Spanish specifically. So
that will be a huge asset. Yeah. Thank you. All right, Miss Ellen, if you can unmute yourself.
Ellen Shaver-Shank. I'm with the Augusta County Fair, and the talent that I would like to have is these computers are always driving me nuts. I'd like to be able to make it work. I had to change something the other day, and I made 3 people my person as opposed to just me. Computers are just driving me crazy. That's me. Sorry.
Right? That would be an awesome skill. Yeah, I was like, can I have an IT skill? Like somehow get that so I know all the, like we got a new router and stuff earlier in the week, and I was like, he was asking me a question. I'm like, you got to dumb it down a little bit. I'm not that technology advanced. All right, Natalie, if you can unmute yourself and introduce and let us know what's one new skill you'd like to have.
Sure. I'm Natalie Bass. I'm Director of Quality Management and Clinical Education with Centera Medical Group. And like Jennifer, glad to be joining you guys for the first time. The first skill that I thought of, I was actually just telling somebody this the other day, is I'd like to learn to play the piano. I learned as a child, and as they say, if you don't practice, you lose it, and didn't seem important when I was 9 years old, but now I wish I still knew how.
That's a great one. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome, welcome. All right, Mary, if you want to unmute yourself and tell us about you.
Sure, and I'll even turn my camera on.
Yay!
So I'm at Blue Ridge Community College, and Matt, we have guitar classes at Blue Ridge, so come sign up. We have some computer classes too for Ellen. But anyway, I guess the first thing that I thought about was video production. I mean, especially in the last year, you know, videos seem to be the thing, especially for, you know, trying to do remote instruction and also just for our marketing efforts. So anyway, I'm struggling. We're trying to learn. I was on a Facebook Live yesterday, so I guess that was a sort of baby step into video. Anyway,
No,
good
that's
to see
awesome. You guys
everybody.
did great. You guys did
Thanks.
great. All right. And Chase, if you want to unmute yourself, if you're able to, and tell us a little bit about you. Oh, are you there, Chase? All right, well, we can always come back to Chase a little bit later, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Courtney Thompson, our president and CEO, who's going to introduce our speaker.
So good morning. Well, thank you to everybody for being here. Jennifer and Natalie, we're welcome. Glad to have you guys on with us this morning. So we have been longtime fans of Hantzmon Wiebel. Matt Hale, who says he's not the cool Matt, we think he's pretty cool. But he was actually our board chair last year for the chamber, and we relied heavily on him. Obviously, during that year, he was the perfect person to have at the helm, and we probably drove him a little crazy with our questions and projections and how are things going and whatever. But anyway, so we have definitely been thankful for Hantzmon Wiebel and their expertise. They did a couple webinars for us last year for our members of just things that were important and happening and what we all needed to know as we were going through this whole pandemic mess. So anyway, they have done some great presentations. And this morning we're excited to have Matt Dean, who we have found out is the actual cool Matt at Hantzmon Wiebel, to talk to us about data-driven decision-making. That's kind of hard to say. So I'm going to turn it right over to Matt, and he will have his presentation. If you have any questions for him, please put them in the chat, or we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So either way. So Matt Dean, take it away.
All right, great. Thank you. Good morning. And, you know, I appreciate you guys having us here. I'm excited to talk about some data analytics today. I'll go ahead and share my screen and get to the PowerPoint here. So what we want to talk about today is, you know, giving you some tools you can use before undertaking any kind of data project, give you some ideas of an example project, and you know, just how you can use your existing data to make decisions within your organization. But before we get into too much about data, one of the key things before you go into any kind of data project is make sure you know what's your goals with this. What are you trying to do with your data? What kind of decisions do you want to make? Start with the end in mind, as we like to say. You can take any piece of data you have and turn it into some kind of graphic or dashboard, and it might look really cool, but without a goal in mind, it might end up being something like, you know, you've got a graph here and it looks cool, but nobody's really using it or looking at it. So to help with this, we've got an exercise. It's just, you know, a good way to come up with some ideas. You know, what if you need a goal for your business, this is a good way to come up with some ideas. Also, if you need a way to think of a new skill, you could use this for how to think of a new skill. So basically, this is the magic wand tool. And the point of it is, you know, if you had a magic wand with unlimited wishes, what would you change about your business or your organization? So if you had a magic wand with unlimited wishes, what would you change? And then just start writing down all your ideas. At this point, it's really just brainstorming. So list out all your ideas of what you would want to change. And it works better if you have a team. You can do it by yourself, but if you have a team, you'll get some more input for some ideas about your organization. And again, you're going for quantity at this point. Just you should be able to come up with lots of ideas, I think. So it could be your wish is all your customers paid on time, or your customers stuck around longer. You wish you could increase customer satisfaction, expense reduction. It really could be anything. So once you have a good list, after it seems like everyone's come up with all their good ideas, then just take some time and narrow down the list to the most important items, the ones you think will give you the most benefit. So pick the top 2 or 3 ideas where you think you'll get the most benefit. You can have your team vote on them if that's what you want to do, and then get a couple goals in mind. So once you have your goals in mind, then it's time to start with your data project. So like I said, it's really important to start with the end in mind before you undertake any kind of data project. I'm working on one here at Hantzmon Wiebel where I got access to all of our data, and we live by timesheets. So the volume of data for that 100 people put in their timesheets every day is kind of crazy. So we're just trying to figure out what we want to do with that at this point. So getting into a little more about data. Data analytics is the process of accumulating, cleaning, and summarizing data for the purpose of making decisions. And this graphic here on the PowerPoint, it's a good example of one of the key points I want to make this morning, and that is data is most valuable when you use it to drive some kind of action. So that's going back to the goals I was talking about just a second ago. You could have all this data and you could look at it, but if you're just looking at it and not using it to drive any kind of action, it's not going to be as particularly helpful. So one, I guess, example on a personal level is I think most of us probably have something that tracks our steps or something like that. So, you've got all this data out there about how much you walk every day. Well, you're probably not going to increase your activity just by slapping on some sort of fitness tracker. You actually have to take some intentional steps to use that data and try and figure out what are the best ways for you to increase that. So, most organizations have some kind of key metrics that they're tracking, obviously, but those really tell you about where you've been and aren't always as helpful, helping you make decisions without some additional analysis. So using data really to drive actions and make decisions is really important. And again, really important to have a goal in mind before you get started. I do have a sample dashboard that I'll show after a couple more slides. So once you've got a goal in mind, then it's time to consider what data you need to measure progress towards that goal. Data can be a barrier to you. Obviously, if you don't have the data in place to measure progress towards your goal, it's kind of hard to use that to make a decision, obviously. So if you don't have the data currently, the best thing you can do is start capturing it today. So if there's some goal you have in mind and you want to measure progress towards that goal and you don't have the data, try to figure out what's the best way to capture it, what you can do going forward to get that data. You won't have years past of history, obviously, but the best you can do is start tracking now going forward. And hopefully, you can come up with a process, hopefully a computer program or something that'll track this for you already, so you don't have to do a lot of work manually accumulating the data. For example, if your goal is to increase your customer satisfaction, again, you'll need a way to track that. So it could be you need to start doing customer surveys or looking at rates of return, how frequently customers come back to you to make purchases, how long they've been a customer, that sort of information. If you want faster turnaround time on sales, you need a way to measure that. So when a customer order comes in the door, how long does it take from once you get that order to once you get it shipped? For nonprofits, maybe tracking which fundraising appeals are most successful would give you some information you could analyze and hopefully make them more successful in the future. Data can come from a lot of places, and most organizations have a lot of data already. As an accountant, the first place I always think of is the accounting records, and there's a lot of good data there, but other places also have data like workflow management software. Maybe that's something we use. Equipment records, donor databases is another good one for nonprofits that usually has a lot of data, or even just external industry information. But one really key point to remember is data is going to be most powerful when you're able to pull together two different or multiple sources of information. So if you can pull together your accounting records and your workflow management software and build that into analysis, that's going to be more valuable than just looking at your accounting records. For example, if you just want to see how your company is doing, you might look at your company's financial statements. But if you want to get a better picture of how you're doing in your industry, you might pull in your financial statements versus industry information so you can see how you're doing compared to the industry. And again, usually there's lots of different data sources, like a point of sale is a good example that always has a lot of good data in it, something that's separate from your accounting system. And usually if you have a good data analytics tool like Power BI, you can pull together these different data sources and get a good analysis. So I mentioned I have an example. So I have an example dashboard we put together of a analytics project, but I first want to show you what the data looked like before we did the dashboard. So hopefully you can see the Excel file here, but this is the data before we put it into a dashboard. So it's really just raw data. Unless you're a robot or something, you wouldn't get a whole lot out of just scrolling through this, because it's a lot there and it's several years worth of information. So this is from a nonprofit for their type of clients they're serving, some information on them. So once we put it into the dashboard, it looks a whole lot better and you can get a whole lot more information out of it. So again, this is an example using real world nonprofit data. And going back to the magic wand we talked about at the start, this nonprofit wants to consider their office space. At the moment, they're feeling like they're limited capacity. It feels cramped when they get busy. They want to be able to expand services and help more people. They feel like there's an increased need in the community for their services. And then they've got a few complaints that, maybe they're a little farther out. If somebody wants to use their services, they have to drive into Charlottesville to get help. So one of the questions is, how can they track whether or not they're meeting their goal of increasing their services? One of the questions is, do they need a new office location, or is their current office location sufficient? And then another question is, if they go to a new office, do they need a second office somewhere else, or is it sufficient to stay in one office, and where should that be? So looking at whether or not they met their goal, this graph here in the middle is just a real quick metric comparing, the current month service to the prior month service. So this is showing that they've helped 4 people in the current month, and the goal of how many people they helped was 7. So that's set up where it's 10% increase over the past month. And then everything here is interactive, which is really cool. One of the things I really like about this is you can click through the data and change and see what would happen. So if they were to increase the goal here, then the metric here changes. They can decrease it, and then the metric also changes. And this is another cool thing. Since they did not meet their goal at a 10% increase, it's showing as red since the goal was not met. But if you decrease this, the goal was met, so it changes green. So again, it's a pretty simple thing to show on the dashboard. It's just an easy way to glance at something like this and see how the organization is doing. Much easier than trying to pull it all together from that Excel file of raw data. The next item they wanted to look at is their capacity. So they feel like they're cramped in their office when it gets busy, but how often is it like that? Well, the data really can help them figure out how often it's that busy. So the bottom left here, the green line is the actual number of people served. And one other cool thing is you can hover over this line with your mouse and it'll show you the number of people served, which is pretty cool. And then the dashed line here is their capacity at their current office. So you can see in times where it got busy, they were over their capacity quite a bit. Other times it was not so busy, they were under capacity. But on average, it looks like, maybe sometimes they're pretty busy, maybe sometimes they're not. But then you get into 2020 for COVID times, of course, they were much less busy because obviously they weren't able to have people coming into their office. So this is one question that, it's on the dashboard. It might be a little inconclusive at this point, whether or not they need a new office. If we added some data for June 1, 2020 through today, you'd probably have a better picture because you could see how much the activity picked back up post-COVID. So this one's kind of a wait and see at this point, after COVID, does the activity pick back up? So, but it is a good visual of how busy they actually are at any given time. And then they could use this to make a decision and see if they think they'll need new office space. The two on the right have to do with their location. So I really like this map graphic. It shows the different zip codes in the area. The lighter colored ones have less people served in those areas, and then the darker colored ones are where most of their clients are coming from. So their office is located in 22903 zip code. So, I mean, just at a glance, you can see most of the people that are coming there for services are in the zip codes around that office. So 01, 02, and 03, just by glancing at the darker colors there, you can see that maybe their office location is in a good spot. It's pretty central to where all of their clients are coming from. But if you click on this, click on one of the zip codes, the whole context of the dashboard changes. So you can see the number of people served. This is only showing people in that zip code. And then the scatter plot down here is pretty interesting to show trends over the last few years. So once if you've got it all together here, it's kind of hard to read the scatter plot, but if you click to drill down into one of these, it can show you trends over time. So in 2016, they had 35 people they helped from 22903. 2019, they were up to 53. And then 2020 is only partial data plus COVID, so it was down to 17. But this shows they were trending upward in that zip code. Same for 22902. You can see that maybe they're trending downward a little there. So less people from that area coming in for service. And then farther out, 23093, pretty rare. It looks like that someone from that zip code comes in. So it could be that, for their current people they're helping, that maybe the office location is okay as it is in 22903, or if they wanted to expand out, it would kind of be like, or a business, it would be reaching out to a new market. So I like this dashboard. I think it's a good example of an operational dashboard. There's a lot of things you can put into a dashboard. I think one of the most common examples is a purely financial dashboard, just pulling in information from your accounting records to see how you're doing, sales, cost of sales, that type of thing. But these are also great to use for operations, like this example. You get information of, for a nonprofit, how many people you're helping, or, other types of things you're trying to improve with your organization. And this particular dashboard is only pulling in one data set. But if you've got, like I said before, if you've got multiple data sets you're able to pull in, depending on what your goals are you're trying to measure, that's when the data becomes really powerful. So again, harnessing all your data, trying to pull it all together and identify what trends, what's happening out there, can be really helpful for your organization. And then again, putting into a graphical format like this makes it much easier to read than just having the raw data. So anyone have any questions, any thoughts on any of this, anything you want to discuss?
I agree with Courtney and Shasta that I think when you put, you have so much data that it's hard to like really comprehend it. But when you look at it in the dashboard like that, it's much easier to comprehend and understand. And, so that's awesome.
Cool, Matt. Looks like you got your hand raised.
I was just thinking, the way I think someone explained it to me one time, and I thought it was interesting. My wife loves Disney World. I mean, that's one of her things. And she's made me a believer too by going down.
Mhm.
But someone explained to me like all of the resorts and the wait times and the cafeterias, everything you do, all of that is driven by data analytics coming through where they're getting it. And they definitely have it down to a science. Now, I guess it's easy to make people happy when that's your entire mission. What is it? Making everyone happy. I mean, but either way, I thought beyond that, just how smooth everything is coming through. And they purely have this data analytics down to an absolute science because they make it so user friendly from it. And I'm sure it takes a little bit of brainstorming on figuring out what your goal is and how you're going to get it. But once you get there, right, if you could use Disney World as an example, I mean, it's fantastic what they're doing there. I mean, but anyway, just general thought. So
That's a really good point though, and it speaks to how important it is to have a data processing, analytics working. Because think about if you go as a guest to Disney World, are you thinking about any of that? No, that's how good they are at it, and just such a good, selling point for having something like this.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions?
I was just going to say it'd be interesting to see what Chick-fil-A has to get people through the line so fast, what kind of data they're looking at.
My gosh, they can whip people in and out of there. And I'm like,
Same.
still say my pleasure.
Right.
And give you extra Chick-fil-A sauce.
Right? All right. Any last minute questions for either Matt?
I bet there's some a lot of data analytics going on over at Centera. Is that true, Jennifer? She's like all day, every day.
And I'm a data junkie. I love it. I actually love that dashboard. What software is that?
That's in Power BI.
Okay. We use Tableau for a lot of our data, but like I said, I'm a data junkie. I've got spreadsheets to work on all afternoon.
It sounds like fun.
You can tell the
You-
people that like love data, love the numbers, and then there's me who's in marketing and events, and I'm like,
She's like, I'll just make it pretty.
Yeah. I can make anything pretty.
So it's funny you say that, because I was trying to put one together. I mean, I put one together for Hantzmon Wiebel back before April 15th. That was, you know, we're saying we've got this many tax returns to do before April 15th. This is what, you know, our goal is and how many we have left. And the information was there, but it was the ugliest thing you've ever seen. Like, I really needed, you know, the data was there, but I needed someone who can make things pretty to help me with it. So that's important too.
It was
Yeah,
funny
all-
though. I mean, we obviously don't have the data analytics some of the larger companies do, but Matt Hale will appreciate this. On our executive committee, we had Matt, our CPA, who is numbers, and we had Amy, who's a marketing person. And we would show these charts and graphs, and Matt was like, yes, yes, yes. And Amy's like, can you make it pretty? Can you make it do this? And it was funny. And Matt was like, that's the numbers. Like, what else do you need? But it's true. I mean, it really, you know, you have to think about too, who you're sharing this with and who needs to
Mhm.
see this information and how do they need to see it. You know, Jennifer's probably presenting things and she has numbers people who can just look at a chart and it's fine. And then she's probably presenting to other people who need to see it visually. You know, same thing with Mary with their planning classes and things. They need to know, you know, what students are interested in which classes and when are professors available and what rooms are available. And, you know, you just think about all the different kinds. I mean, data makes the world go round, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
And the physicians need the pretty charts. It's kind of funny. They don't want the numbers. They want the pretty graphs and the bubbles and everything else. So
Yep.
it's pretty interesting.
So I also think, you know, doing the magic wand and getting a group of people around brainstorming on it, I mean, that's kind of fun too. While it's not purely numbers generated, but you get an idea of who you're working with and seeing things from a different perspective on what's important, you know, and then brainstorming how do we get that goal, you know, kind of send, like Matt was saying, you know, with the end in mind, or send yourself a postcard more or less. Where do we want to be in 6 months and what's the biggest bang for the buck on that, you know? So, you know, I've always enjoyed that process as well.
Well, and that uses a different part of your brain too, you know, I think that's and really important. And I like how he said, begin with the end. We talk about, you know, what's the so what? You know, we can sit here and look at numbers and data and all day long, but if there's no so what, I mean, that's all you're ever doing is churning out numbers without any goal or any meaning behind it. So that's good.
Well,
Any
thank
other
you guys so
questions?
much. We always, as Courtney said, we love Hantzmon Wiebel. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is being recorded, and I'm just going to pop the that is our website that it's going to be linked to. So if you ever want to come back to this and watch it later or share it with some of your other coworkers, feel free to. It'll be on there later this morning. So again, thank you, Matt and Matt, and thank you all so much for coming. We hope you have a great Friday.
Can I
Happy
add
Mother's Day to
one-
the moms.
Yeah. And if you guys want to contact Matt Dean about any of the Power BI or just talk more about it, you know, I'm sure he can do it. You can just type in Hantzmon Wiebel into a Google search. We should come up. Or Kim or Courtney or Shatta can give you our contact information. But it is something that Matt really enjoys talking about. You know, and I'd say it's a passion of his. So you know, it's always fun just to brainstorm on those ideas. So don't hesitate. That's what we're here to do. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.